Hey everyone, today I have a special video that I wanted to do. So these are my copies of Pokémon Red and Green. More specifically, these are the Japanese versions of the game that I have, and both are almost complete boxes, and I'll explain that part later. So I have the game manual and other pieces. I bought these games used several years ago, and ever since I bought them, I haven't really touched them since, so I thought it'd be pretty cool to do a showcase on the original titles that started the franchise. I would also like to note that I do have Japanese copies of Yellow and Blue as well, but unfortunately they are in storage currently, and so we won't be going over those ones. But I do have the two physical copies that we have that first launched in Japan, so I thought that's more than enough. Luckily, I do have my Japanese 3DS with all the mainline titles up to Crystal, and there is Japanese Blue and Yellow right there. So we're gonna do an overview and show off some gameplay, and I do have a Game Boy Advance to do that. I don't have a capture card, so we're not gonna go have the clearest footage, but I will say it's nice having a Game Boy Advance with backlighting. I'll also briefly show some gameplay on my 3DS as well. My red copy does have an original save file from the previous owner, but I think I did do a trade with it. And my green copy is an original save file that I started several years ago. I do understand Japanese. I wouldn't call myself fully fluent just yet, but enough for me to go over stuff for this video. And besides, Pokemon is not a complicated game, and for those who've played the series for so long, I'd like to imagine you already know how to navigate and what's going on, even if it's in Japanese. With that said, let's finally dive in. Alright, so here we obviously have the two iconic boxes with that amazing watercolor artwork done by Ken Sugimori. And on the top right corner it does say Game Boy, and here it says role playing. And this was done to define the genre of the game, and I know games sold in Japan did this so consumers knew what they were buying. Also, we have the kanji for the different versions, so we have the kanji Midori for green and Aka for red, and down below it says here to use the link cable to trade monsters. And by looking at the side of the box, it says that green and red have some different Pokemon, but otherwise they are essentially the same game. Back to the front, it says that you can use the Super Game Boy that connects to the Super Famicom if you have that accessory. Alright, let's look at the back. So on the top it says to trade monsters using the link cable and to gather your friends in this role-playing game. Moving down, we see more version differences with the boxes. So green we got Bulbasaur, or in Japanese Fushiginane, and red we have Charmander or Hitokage. Next, let's go over this text. So here it says welcome to the world of pocket monsters or Pokemon. Use monster balls to catch Pokemon, make friends, and use the link cable to trade and battle. Collect all 150 Pokemon. As we know, there's actually 151 with Mew included, which you can get by messing with the game, by the way. Anyways, here it says complete the Pokédex. Once again, it says you can use the Super Game Boy here, and just more text using the game and the battery. What interests me is that on the bottom we do have text in English, and I want to highlight this part where it says commercial rental prohibited. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Japan back then did not allow rentals for video games because it ruined sales for the developers. I'm not sure if that still exists, but if you know anything, let me know in the comments. Okay, let's actually open these boxes. Let's start with the cartridges themselves. Look at that. These cartridges did not have any colors to match their versions, unlike in North America, so all we have is gray to look at. But we do have cases for the cartridges, so that's nice to keep it safe. And these two copies look very clean, which is also nice. Now, behind the plastic we do have several pieces of materials. So in the beginning of this video I said that there were almost complete sets, because my red copy has most materials, and my green version is missing a couple of pieces but has one big piece of material, but we'll go over both copies. Starting with this one, it is advertising Game Boy Color products and accessories. In the back we have the 6 colors available for Game Boy Color: purple, blue, red, yellow, clear purple, and clear. My personal favorite is the purple one if you want to know, and look at that price, 6,800 yen. Opening this up, we got Nintendo advertising the amazing color display. Fancy stuff right here, folks. On the other side, it talks about the Game Boy series and its compatibility with other Game Boys. Here are the different link cables. This is one for the Pocket, Light, and Color, and the next one is just for Game Boy. And the last one says it's a connector so that you can trade with the original Game Boy if you own a Pocket, Light, or Color. Here we have a power adapter and charger, and for the last we have a cleaning kit and earbuds. Alright, so that covers that, and this piece is just a warning and caution notice. So these two pieces of materials are the ones missing in my green copy, but green does have something else that's important, and we'll get into that in just a sec. But now let's go over the game manuals themselves. Both manuals are pretty much the same with some color differences. I do like how the background has silhouettes of other Pokemon, which is pretty neat. I won't go over everything in this manual, but highlight some interesting parts. We got our introduction by Professor Oak, or Okido Hakase. Here we have our table of contents. And next, we have our character introductions here, starting with you and your rival. What's really cool to note that in Red version, the manual calls you Red and your rival Green, and vice versa. On the next page, it explains what are Pokemon and your goal of the game, as well as the controls, the standard stuff. Now we got how to use buildings like Pokemon centers, shops, and items. So I'm going to skip a bit here because this part showcases the gym leaders and I want to highlight this part. We got Nibi City's gym leader, Takeshi, with the gray badge, Hanada City's Kasumi with the blue badge, Kuchiba City's Machisu and the orange badge, Tamamushi City gym leader, Erika, and the rainbow badge. Erika's name does not change and it stays the same in the Western release. Continuing on, we got Sekichiku City with Kyo and the pink badge, Yamabuki City's Natsume and the gold badge, Guden Island's Katsura with the crimson badge, and finally Tokiwa City's ... aka Sakaki and the green badge. I like this section because it shows off who you'll be challenging and it really makes me miss stuff like this since game manuals are non-existent nowadays. I want to skip a couple of pages again to this part where it goes over some of the early Pokemon you'll find on your adventure. We have some dex entries with the starters as well as early route and Viridian Forest Pokemon. Again, this is stuff that we don't see anymore, and besides you can always use the internet to search them up, but on the back we do have Bulbasaur and Charmander for their respective versions, which is a nice touch. Now I want to show off this final piece, and that is the Kanto region's town map, which is boxed with the game. It does also highlight most locations, but not everything. It definitely must have been fun using this map as a kid while playing and going on your adventure. Like, you pop this out while traveling so you don't have to pull out your in-game map. So all of these locations are their Japanese names and of course were changed or slightly altered when they came to the West. I like this map because it definitely gives more life to the world that you're traveling in besides looking at the pixels in your in-game map. So we have Tokiwa no Mori or Viridian Forest, we also have Iwayama, which is Rock Tunnel, and all the other places that you're familiar with. But that's about it when it comes to these games and their boxes. I do believe I'm still missing some pieces of material, like I think there was one highlighting the Super Game Boy, and the other one is information on using the link cable, but for the most part we got all the main essentials. Finally, let's now put these games in the Game Boy Advance and go over some stuff. Alright, so I do have my Game Boy Advanced, and what's really nice about having an Advanced is that you could still play your old Game Boy games, so Game Boy Color, and whatnot. So let's go put in the game, and it will have a little bump in the end right over there, but that's normal. Okay, so now the game's booting up, and with the Game Boy Advance you can actually switch between like a widescreen mode and this normal aspect ratio. I'm sticking with the normal one of course just because it's better to look at. But we do have red inserted, and we're gonna go check out the file. And here we are in Cerulean City. There's not that much going on, but let's go check out this team that we have here. Okay, so let's look at these Pokemon. What do we have here? So this is a level 100 Golem, which is insane. I think I did trade this Pokemon from the green cartridge from the original owner's save before I started a new file on that one. And here we also have a Pidgeotto. And next over here we do have a level 73 Mewtwo, which is also impressive. You have to beat the game to get that guy. And a Zapdos, so this person went to the power plant. And we have another Mewtwo at 73. I don't know how, but there you go. And last we have Frieza, which is Articuno. So that's pretty cool. And I really like how these old sprites looked back then. Articuno definitely does not look like that now, but it is interesting. Alright, so we're just about done there, and now here we are in Cerulean City just roaming around. It does have a red background because we're playing on the Game Boy Advance with the color support with Pokemon Red. And here's the Pokedex, and there's not really much going on. It's still pretty much empty other than the Pokemon that were traded into this file, so that's why all of those legendary Pokemon were there. But speaking of the legendaries, we do have our Mewtwo. We have Frieza, Sanda, and Faya, which are the legendary bird trio. Okay, so one thing I want to do is check out the player information. This person only has 2 badges, so no Lieutenant Surge yet. But that just about does it for Pokemon Red version, so we're going to save real quick, and let's go take a look at Pokemon Green. Okay, so now we're gonna switch games. Here is Pokemon Green. It looks nice, it looks clean. Let's go insert it into the cartridge slot and get this thing started. Alright, so here we go. This is a new save file that I have started like several years ago, so I don't really remember much, but I do know that we are in the very beginning of the game, and I do believe I picked up Bulbasaur. So yeah, there's Bulbasaur right there, Fushigina. And since we're here at the very beginning, I think it's a great idea that we should do the rival battle and just take a quick look at that. Okay, so let's go get this thing started. So we're gonna walk down, and our rival Red is going to challenge us to a duel. Let that thing load, and here he is. And of course, because I chose Bulbasaur, he's going to have Charmander or Hitokage. And right here, there's me. And basically what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna tackle all the way through. I'm not really gonna take this battle any seriously. But yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna skip ahead because it's nothing that entertaining. Alright, so there we go. We have leveled up and we have defeated our rival for the first time. And he's just gonna go run off now, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna walk out here too, but this is Pallet Town and there's not really much to go off here too. But I think that covers just about that for Pokemon Green version, and what I'm gonna do next actually is pull up the 3DS versions of the Game Boy titles just to see some of the differences over there and see how that compares. Alright, so now I switched to the 3DS and here it is. There's Pikachu and we're in Celadon City right now. Let's go take a look at our Pokemon and see what's going on there. Alright, so we got Pikachu, we also have Venusaur, we have all the Kanto starters with Pidgeot and Mew as well, so let's take a look at Mew. You can get Mew through messing with the game, and you can still do this on the 3DS version, which is really cool. So this is my team, pretty standard to be honest, nothing special here, especially for yellow having all the starters. But here's Pikachu, and I really love the sprites with yellow version. I think they did a really good job making it look updated. Alright, so now we have green version that we are going to be checking out, and compared to having this on the Game Boy Advance, this looks nicer, it's a bit bigger. But you can't change to that wide support that the Game Boy Advance has, so the Game Boy gets a plus, I guess. But the 3DS does have the green filter for the original Game Boy, which is nice. But right here we do have our Venusaur, and look at that sprite for green version. We don't have that sprite for our version of Pokemon Red and Blue because those sprites were based off of Japanese Blue version. Alright, and next we have Pixie, or Pixie, which is Clefable. This is another favorite of mine alongside Gengar. Gengar is actually my favorite Pokemon out of Gen 1. But we do have Ninetales here. And the next one is Starmie, which is still the same in the Japanese version. So next we have Showers, which is Vaporeon. And it's really interesting how lots of Japanese names kind of use English words for their names, which is kind of funny. And last but not least, we do have Aerodactyl. He is my fly user, so that's why he's on the team. But I really do love his Pokemon Green sprite. I think that is really cool. So I'm gonna pull up Red version just real quick just because I have it here. There's actually not a lot going on. It's still on a new save. I didn't touch anything other than just get Charmander as my starter because I just wanted to have that matching theme with the Pokemon versions. So yeah, there he is. But yeah, that's about it for Red. He's still in Pallet Town. Alright, last but not least, I have Pokemon Blue version booted up, and we're gonna go take a look at that one, and this will be the game that will be the basis for the Western releases of Pokemon Red and Blue. Alright, so we're gonna go take a look at our Pokemon again. Here we do have Wartortle, or Kemuru, and he has the sprite that we're more familiar with in our versions of Pokemon Red and Blue. But I'm still in the early game, so there's not a lot of interesting Pokemon to look at. Here we have Spear, which is a Beedrill. And now we have the old version of Pikachu. I really miss that version so much. And of course we have our Butterfree right here, which is a nice design. I really like it. And that pretty much covers all of the versions of Pokemon Generation 1. So we covered the games on Game Boy Advance as well as the 3DS versions. And I know it's not the best quality, but I'm still happy that I was able to show you some gameplay on actual hardware between the Game Boy Advance and the 3DS. So I hope you liked all of that. So those were the Japanese versions of the Generation 1 Pokemon games. I hope you all got to see some cool stuff by taking a look at these classics. If this type of video interested you, let me know and I'll try to take a look at other old Japanese games that I have and do an overview just like this video. So please like this video and definitely subscribe if you haven't, especially if you want to see more Japanese games that I do have and that I do want to cover as well. And even though that we do have these games in the West, taking a look at the Japanese versions, we can compare between Western releases, seeing what changed, what stayed the same, and just all the cool little bits that we might not get to see. And I really appreciate you guys watching this video. Again, one more time, if you haven't, please subscribe if you're interested in this type of content. But until next time, stay calm and stay chill, everyone. See ya.